Welcome to A Look Inside. I'm your host, Demetria Head, and today's guest is author Heather Bennett, the author of Helplessly Hoping. Welcome
Yay.
to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, get into your latest novel, Helplessly Hoping. Let's talk about Dale Matthews' character. He's such a complex character, balancing fame with personal dissatisfaction. So, what inspired you to create a protagonist like Dale, and how did you approach portraying his emotional journey throughout the novel?
Um, I think a lot of that is number one, I love a rock star. I've always loved writing about a rock star. It's kind of like I've always been drawn to like that motivation of what makes them want to do something like that, because the idea of standing in front of a crowd and singing just makes my palms sweat. So I've always liked that concept of everything, and I wanted to dig in deeper that goes beyond the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
What are they like when they are alone and by themselves and sitting alone in a hotel room? Um, that kind of a thing, with their wants, their needs, their desires. So that's kind of what I've always been drawn to and started following that journey.
Okay, well, let's talk about Nikki Barons, which is another intriguing character, and Nikki plays a pivotal role in Dell's rediscovery. So, how did you craft her personality to complement and challenge Dell's jaded outlook on life? And what do you think makes their dynamic so compelling?
I'm just thrilled that you think they're compelling. I'm so excited.
It is.
I think mainly because I've always been strong. I like a strong female character. I don't like the little wishy-washy, wimpy, come rescue me kind of girls.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also don't like them to be so hard and so tough that they have that
Hmm.
rough exterior that it just is too hard around the edges. So I kind of like to find that balance. And I think that balance would work for someone like Dale, who's
Yeah.
always had the females falling at his feet. He's now,
Hmm.
snap his fingers, and here's this chick that comes running, and now he's kind of confronted with someone who's independent and a little bit sassy. So I think when she comes along, he's not 100% sure what to do with her, but he really likes that. Um, so that, that plus her not being all that impressed that he's a rock star
Hmm.
really kind of, I think, sets the stage up for the two of them to kind of like, okay, wait a minute. Who are you? What's going on? And let's that build.
Okay, so the rock star lifestyle, we know that, you hear about the glamour, but you also hear about the chaos. But in Helplessly Hoping, you dive deeper into themes of identity, forgiveness, and personal growth. What made you want to explore these themes within the context of a rock star romance?
Well, kind of quoting that line from Almost Famous of, famous people are just more interesting. I think you can use I mean, most people are going to be dealing with this kind of a situation, but I mean, it may not get as much attention unless you
Mhm,
make that character somebody who's
mhm,
going to be, draw you in and make you interested. So I think a rock star is a really good piece to hang that on.
mhm,
And then, again, going back to being kind of fascinated by this, what
mhm.
guides them and what makes them, they're human, they're people. It's
Yes.
just, it goes beyond the sex, drugs, rock and roll,
Right,
getting
right.
laid, whatever. I want to know that underneath, what drives them, what makes them feel that extraordinary pressure that they feel. But behind
Mhm,
closed doors, they're kind of struggling with the same pressures that
mhm.
anybody else is going to be dealing with.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Mhm,
so, their main thing is, we have to push it aside and pretend that everything is great in front of all of these people. Um, so, I mean, we also do that, I think, to a degree as regular people. We kind of like, we portray this person online, or we portray this person who we are at work. But when we're standing alone in our bathroom, looking in the bathroom mirror, we're
mhm,
going, oh God, what did I do?
mhm, mhm.
So I do think that they kind of parallel each other rather well, and the fact that he's a rock star doesn't necessarily change the human emotion of
Right,
who they are and what they're doing.
right, right. You know, when I read your books, like with Flipping the Record, for example, I automatically get these Aerosmith vibes for some reason. And that's a good thing. But,
Okay.
and that's why when I advertise it, I use like an Aerosmith songs on my Instagram because it just gives me, the Aerosmith vibes. And I grew up, in that era, kind of.
Yes. Yes, as did I, which is why
Hmm.
it's another
Hmm.
reason why I go towards the 70s because I like,
Yes,
I mean, that's kind of my little spot. I
right,
love that
right.
time frame. It's before all the
Hmm.
electronics and the music, and
Oh yeah.
it's just classic.
Hmm. Oh yeah, those were the days.
Yes. Where all of this bad behavior was allowed.
Okay, so I do want to ask you about the slow burn romance between Dell and Nikki. It's a central part of the novel. So, how do you approach writing romance in a way that feels natural and authentic? Because, you know, we're talking about a kind of fast paced environment, high stakes environment in the music industry. So, how did you approach writing the romance to feel natural?
I think mainly because they both had a reason to avoid falling in love. Like they both had a reason to avoid this. So if I made them jump into bed in this run, this shoot, it doesn't feel real because
Yeah.
they weren't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And they both kind of needed to be there to be ready. Dale's done that whole fast-paced, high stakes. He's cynical about all of it. So he's
Mm-hmm.
not looking for something like that. She's been burned by her past with her ex. She's not looking for another rock star.
Yeah.
So I think for them, they both needed to learn how to trust. They both needed to learn how to trust themselves as well as somebody else, and that's going to take time, and I wanted to show that that took time and it wasn't just a quick jump into bed, let's go. It's just not in their characters.
Right, right. All while still making them relatable, because I know a lot of people who can definitely still relate to this, even if, everyone doesn't, walk around dating rock stars, but
Go figure.
still, but you have that pocket that do, that are, dating. So it is relatable, and even, and not necessarily just dating rock stars, I think the dynamic between the two is still relatable in general.
Right. I mean, any
Hmm.
person that you're going to be attracted to or want to
Hmm.
build an actual relationship with, you need to take the time, you need to slow it down, you need to
Yeah.
be sure, you need to trust yourself, you need to trust them.
Hmm.
And I mean, Nikki comes with a whole lot of baggage. So for
Yeah.
her to kind of deal with all of that,
Hmm.
he needs to be really patient. And I think that teaches him as well. The patience is going to be worthwhile because look what I'm getting in return.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that the backdrop of your story, uh, or the underlying message of your story can be cathartic as well?
I'm hoping that's why people are liking it or that
Hmm.
they're drawn to them. I want them to
Yeah.
feel like they're honest to God characters, that they're real
Hmm.
people and not just that cookie cutter idea of, well, this is what a rock star is, and this is what, I'm aiming for people to kind of be able
Hmm.
to relate and find something in their own life with it that they can work with.
Right. Okay. So music plays a significant backdrop to the story, obviously, especially as Dell reconnects with his past as a musician. So, how does your own experience, if at all, or love for music influence the way you write about the music world? And did you draw from any personal inspirations when creating Dell's rock star history?
Yes. Like all of my favorite musicians leave their bands. Like it always Kevin Richardson left the Backstreet Boys. John Taylor left Duran Duran. I mean, Glenn
Oh,
Frey, not my favorite, but Don Henley. That's my
hmm.
latest views. They leave, they come back together. They leave, they come back
Yeah,
together. They go
yeah.
solo, they come back together. So that's always been, I've always been just fascinated with the whole music
Hmm.
thing. It's always been a backdrop. All of my Forgive my cat. She's discovered that there's somebody here to talk
Oh,
to. She'll make an appearance any minute now. But so, I think, there she is. Um, say hi. Say hi. Say hello. There
hi.
she
Oh,
is.
beautiful.
She's little Charlie girl. She's gonna go away.
Oh,
That is her distress call. She is being held captive. Just
oh.
but anyway, so no, the music there's always been an influence. It's always been a backdrop. I went to
Mhm.
see a Billy Joel concert and it was like my entire life was laid out. Oh, this is what happened and this is what was going on when this was big and this is what was
Yes.
going on. So it's always there. It's always a
Mhm.
soundtrack. I do love a band documentary. I will watch any band documentary you want to put in front of
Yeah,
me. Because again,
me too.
it's fascinating to see like
Yes,
what they do.
it is. It is. It is. I was going to ask you, like, when you were a teenager, well, young adult, I should say, did you ever follow those band tours? You
Oh,
did?
yes. Oh, yes. I've completely lost track of how many times I've seen Duran Duran. I have no idea anymore. Same with the Backstreet Boys. And like when the Backstreet Boys were big, I was old enough to have, independent wealth and, well,
Mhm.
not wealth, but independent income that I could be like, oh, I'm taking a
Mhm.
vacation and I'm going away for a week and I'm going to follow the band. So I was able to do it. And
Yeah.
it was so much fun.
Wow.
I managed to meet most of Duran Duran.
Wow.
Um, I've managed to meet most of the Backstreet Boys as well. So I'm coming for you, Eagles. I'm coming. Gonna meet Don Henley yet.
Well, I've always wanted to meet Steven Tyler.
Yeah, he would be.
Yeah.
He would be not. That would be awesome.
Yes. Yes. That was one of my dreams when, when I was probably no, I was younger than a teenager, but I've always wanted to meet him even still. I
Right?
don't, I think my parents would have killed me for tried to follow a tour, but it's like, no, no.
You're not doing that. I mean, the best was when John Taylor quit Duran Duran, he started his own band and he did like a little tiny little tour. He did the East Coast. He did tour like a six, seven, or eight, 10 some dates along the East Coast. And I had friends of mine who came to stay with me, and we literally drove to seven of the 10 shows. So
Wow.
we got to hang out with the band. We got to hang out backstage with the opening band who were darling. Before they
Wow.
even hit, it was Sixpence None the Richer. They were darling. And so it was fun, but it wasn't the
Mhm.
bad sex,
Yeah,
drugs, rock and roll thing.
right.
He's
Right.
sober. We're hanging out at some like tiny little dive club. It was just fun. It was like I'm living this.
Oh, wow. I would have loved that to be a fly in that camp.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it felt like. I was like so nervous and so excited at the same
Huh?
time. It was just like, what's going on? What's going on? Who's that over there? Where are they going?
I know. Oh, I envy you, Heather. Oh.
Oh,
So my next question for you. In helplessly hoping, Dale faces a critical decision to embrace his past or continue a quieter life. So, how do you see his decision reflecting real life struggles many people face when it comes to reconciling their past with their future?
I think a lot of that it goes back to that self-reflection and looking at your own past for the most part. And I think what I was able to do with Dale was to make him understand or realize that even though, yeah, there was some really crappy times and it blew up in his face, with enough time, he was able to look back and go, but it was one of the best times of my life. So he was still able eventually to remember the friendship. He was there to remember the love and how much fun it was. And it stopped dwelling on just the bad. Don't keep thinking about just that awful part. And I think, just as humans, that's kind of where we want to be. And that's kind of the goals that we want to have. I think everybody has something in their past that they wish they could do over, or they think about
Yeah.
and like, oh
Yeah.
God, how come or why?
Hmm.
So I'm kind of like the idea was for that to happen is to say, give it some time, give it some distance, give it some space, and try to remember not just the crap, but remember the love, because that's what you want to take away from everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long did it take you to write Helplessly Hoping?
That uh I started writing in probably in 2021. And then,
Okay.
so,
Hmm.
I mean, it came out pretty quickly. I set it aside as you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Set it aside, you reread it, you rewrite, you redo, you edit. I've got an
Hmm.
amazing critique group, like an amazing critique group that I meet with every Tuesday. And they really were fantastic in helping
Hmm.
me dive deep and tighten the story up. I would never have
Yeah.
been able to do it without them. They've been fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So it
Yeah.
takes time, but it's
It
worth
does.
it.
It does because I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed reading that and flipping the record. I haven't read because I know you have other projects. I haven't read those yet. I would love to. You're a great writer.
Thank
You
you.
you you can tell you poured a lot into your writing because it's consistent. Flipping the record was really good, and it's consistent with this, like your style. You're true to your style, and it really stands out. And I enjoy being able to read a book where I'm like, this is really good, and you understand the premise, and you don't get lost. Like, wait a minute, what were we talking about? I didn't have to do that with this.
Yay.
You can tell you
Thank
had
you.
a focal point, and you could tell you gave it your all.
I did. I mean, I fell in love with my characters, and that's my
Hmm.
main. I make my both same with flipping the record as well. I
Hmm.
loved my characters, so
Hmm.
I wanted to do right by them, and that's
Yes. Well,
that's.
you did. You
Thank.
did. In my opinion, you did.
Oh, thank you.
So, what challenges did you face? Do you think you faced any challenges really balancing the glamorous and the chaotic elements of rock star life with the deeper emotional complexities of Dell's story?
Um, Basically, what I mainly worry about is getting the rock star lifestyle correct, because there was research going into trying to figure out
Hmm.
what the heck it is that a PA actually would do for
Hmm.
somebody. So that took a lot of guessing and probably a lot of creative license. I tried to make it realistic.
It, it sounded convincing.
I,
That's why
I
I was
hoped.
asking you. That's why I asked you, like, did you live a rock star life in your past? No, it's convincing though.
I mean, I mean, that there's only so much they can do. I figure a rock star
Mhm.
would be able to do, especially if, like, he's going out on a solo tour. He's got to be functioning. He can't deal with all of those little nitpicky things
Yeah,
so
yeah,
someone needs to pick up that slack. So she just kind of came in to pick up that slack. And
yeah,
that's kind of where I just threw everything in. So, if anything, that's the balance that I needed to try to find. I do
yeah.
think, like I said, people are people, humans are humans. I think you can play with the emotions regardless if they're a Martian or a rock star or, Joe Schmo
Yeah,
salesman. It's trying to get the balance, making sure that those worlds are built correctly is the main.
yeah. Oh
So that
yeah.
was my biggest worry.
No, you pulled it off. You really pulled it off. I could read all of your stories
Oh,
over
thank
and over
you.
again. I think I read Flipping the Record twice.
Oh.
I read this one once. I would go back and read it. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you though,
Hmm.
because I'm a writer, but right now I have like a couple of writing projects that I definitely set aside the past year.
Uh-huh.
But when you're writing, do you start out like for me, I like to write a character analysis first before because for me, it helps me to get to feel and decide what I want to write about. It helps me to create my plot and character development just doing the character analysis. Do you ever do that? The
I
character
don't.
analysis? You don't?
I don't.
Okay.
I will start with like a scene. Suddenly somebody
Okay.
pops in my head and they start
Hmm.
talking. And I write it down and get out of their way. And I will
Oh,
let the
you're
two
good.
characters talk and just do what you need
Yeah.
to do. I mean, there's a ton of editing.
Hmm.
So much has to get condensed. That's constantly being told,
Hmm.
condense, 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 re-editing. But for the most part, the story, I don't know the
Hmm.
end until I reach the end. I just
Hmm.
follow where they're going to talk to me and tell me.
Yeah.
And
You're like my second oldest sister. She's a writer as well. And she says the story, I just let the story take a life of its own. I don't know the end until the end. And now with me, I'm a bit more rigid. And then I get frustrated. I'm like, okay, let me just move that to the side. I can't right now.
someone says like, "Oh, you should try outlining, just outline it." I'm like, "Yes, but when I get to the end, I know what happens. I'm not interested. I don't want to write this story because I know what happens. So never mind."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was at work one time writing the first novel, and
Hmm.
on my lunch break or something, and I finished the novel, and I was
Hmm.
like, that wasn't supposed to happen. And I got up and cried in the bathroom because I was like, that's not what was supposed to happen. But that was the end of the story. And I was like, I can't believe that they just did this to me.
Oh, wow. That's too funny. That's too funny. Do you ever do what they will consider brain dumping when you're I guess if you're just writing and writing and writing and dumping everything out, on paper. Do you ever do that?
I don't really know. I just it just kind of comes out. I really
Yeah.
have no process to it.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it will be pulled from an experience I've had that has nothing to do with a rock star, but if a relationship or something that I've had in the past, that ends up in there somehow without really
Hmm.
knowing it. But I don't, it just comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it comes out really well. So I do have a question about the chemistry between Del and Nikki. It develops through this witty banter and shared vulnerability. So how do you build this kind of natural chemistry between the characters? And do you have a favorite moment between them in the novel?
So I'm not really sure how that chemistry came about.
Hmm.
Only again, going back to I let them talk, I get out of their
Hmm.
way. I kind of understand the motivations between the two and what's holding them back. So I just
Yeah.
kind of try to get those pieces to fit together.
Hmm.
So it works. I'm thrilled. And as far as there are actually two scenes in the book that I
Hmm.
absolutely adore. And the first one is them talking about going to the Grammys, and he's trying to convince her to
Uh-huh.
go to the Grammys, and they're having that conversation down the hallway. And the two of them bantering back and forth, it's just easy and it's fun and you can feel their comfort with one another, and you can feel her reluctance and you can feel his come on, you want to do
Yeah.
this, come
Yeah.
on. So I loved the two of them in that one. And
Hmm.
then of course there's that the reconciliation scene of them in
Hmm.
the kitchen at the towards the ends where they're just finally everything is on the table.
Yeah.
And to be
Yeah.
able to be that vulnerable with one another
Hmm.
and that open, and just especially for Nikki because she's been so closed off for so much of the book, that for her to
Yeah.
just like, this is what's going on, that's when you knew that there was going to be they were good because that trust was there. They were able to be vulnerable
Yeah.
with one another and still
Mhm.
be loved, which was just
Mhm.
probably one of my favorite.
Yeah. Now, writing dialogue, in my opinion, is different from writing and shaping the scene.
Yes.
So do you, which one comes easiest for you? Writing,
Dialogue.
because I know the dialogue, it
Dialogue.
comes easy.
Yes. Oh
Really?
God, dialogue. I hate writing description. I hate filling it out. I'm like, go float in the white room, just talk. It's fine. But having to create that room, it always feels like to me like
Mhm.
it feels like it's too much explaining. I don't want to get like bored and like do it's harder for me to do the description. I can do a
Oh,
dialogue in a heartbeat.
oh, wow.
I hear what they're saying and write it down and just let it
Wow.
be.
I'm definitely the for me, I feel like I struggle with the dialogue. I think I'm better at shaping or bringing out atmospheric descriptions, and other scenes. But I think that for me, dialogue can be challenging because I'm like, I don't want this to sound. I want it to sound a certain way, but it's not coming out right. It's not. I'm not finding the right words.
Right.
That's where my frustration lies.
And are you doing romance or are you doing what genre are you?
No, I write thrillers.
Oh,
I
okay.
write thrillers.
That's exciting.
Yes, I love thrillers. I don't think I could write a romance. I think that would be a huge challenge for me. I'm like, I wouldn't know where to start. I don't know. I love reading them. I love
Right.
reading like a really good romance like these. I never read a rock and roll romance before I read your books.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I had never even heard of a rock and roll romance novel before reading your books. Seriously. And I'm like, what's this? But oh my goodness, I would be scratching my head like, where do I start if I wanted to write in the romance genre?
I would
I
do the
wouldn't
same thing
know.
for thriller. I'm like, I don't know how to do a thriller. I wouldn't have the start to know how. I've got so many
Really?
friends, like a lot of people in the critique group, they're doing fantasy, another
Hmm.
one's doing horror, and I'm like,
Yes.
I wouldn't even know where to start. There's
Oh, that's
just,
right down my alley.
I'm
Yeah,
like, you're just stuck in the 70s with a rock star with me. Sorry.
but I love it though. I
Yeah.
love it. There are genres, including this. I never thought that I would find myself enjoying any romance novels, seriously. And then, honestly, when I started reading yours, and it's like with um, authors who come to me to review dystopian
Right.
novels. I'm like, I don't think I would ever like a dystopian novel. And yet, when I read like some of the novels by these indie authors, I'm like, these are really good.
I
I'm
think
glad that
indie authors just
yeah,
don't get enough credit.
no, they don't. Because I've read some New York Times bestsellers, and I'm like, how did this make the New York Times bestseller? But to each his own.
Right.
But when I read like the indie authors, I'm like, there's some
There are
talent.
some really good authors out there
Yes.
that are just not getting picked up for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
exactly.
Traditionally, I mean, I just gave up because there's only so
Yeah,
much I could,
yeah,
I could do.
yeah.
But because
I
I wanted the
understand.
story out in the world. I mean, I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't wait another 5 years for this to get out into the world
Right.
and wait for and try to find an agent. I mean, I
Hmm.
tried with
Hmm.
flipping the record. And the one agent that I did talk to was like, well, if she was in the if it was the 80s instead of the 70s, I might, but and I'm like, but this is my story. Like, I'm not
And the story still resonates because, like, even though it's in the 70s, a lot of that when I read your books, I didn't immediately think, oh, this is so dated back in the 70s. I was thinking more so about how you shaped it. And I'm like, okay, well, this still happens today. This could happen in any era. So I wasn't so hung up on the era, you
Right.
know, because that to me that didn't even matter.
I mean, I liked, I guess I liked that time period because there are the electronics. You're not going to have the cell
Yeah.
phone. You're not going to have,
Hmm.
it's old school. This is what's
Yeah.
built around, and you're not going to have the social media because I think
Yeah.
Stockholm took a whole other turn once
Hmm.
you hit the whole social media thing. I don't want
Oh
to deal
yeah.
with social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think it's easier writing in the era you're familiar with as opposed to a technology riddled era, or do you think you can do both?
I think I could probably, again, I think the issues are the same, but
Hmm.
if you are in the technology era, there's so much technology, especially, even in like just the recording process now. You don't need to go to the
Yes.
studio anymore. You're doing it on
Yeah.
your own little living room. You just plug
Hmm.
something in and off it goes. You don't need
Hmm.
to have a band technically because he can do it his part and he does his part and you're doing this part and none of you need to be in the
Yeah.
same room. And so that changes the dynamic of the musician. And I like the band concept. I like
Hmm.
having, the guys in the room together, butting heads and screaming at each other.
Yeah.
And,
I like that too. I
that's
like
kind
that too.
of
To me, it's
there's
not
your
real.
tension.
It's not
Yeah.
real unless that's happening.
Yes, you need the tension there somehow.
Yes.
So, and then you're going to add the whole social media thing on it and
Hmm.
what's their handle and what are they going to do and are they embrace it and are they going to be, and I just don't, I can't do my
Yeah.
own. I'm not going to do it for someone
Right.
else in a book.
Right. That's too funny. So, second chances and personal growth, in my opinion, are key themes in the book. I like to get behind the book of what I think, each author's intention is. So when I spot themes like that, I like to, you know, bring them up. So obviously there was personal growth. So what do you hope readers take away from Dell's journey, especially when it comes to healing and finding hope in unexpected places? And the same with Nikki.
I think I would love for the readers to come away with an idea of dismantling the walls that we
Mm-hmm.
build to protect ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and being able to be more open and, finding trust not just in others, but in ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we doubt so much. I
Mm-hmm.
doubt so much in myself. And forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean pretending like nothing ever happened,
Right.
but letting that distance come in and again going back to, let that distance, remembering that there was love, remembering that there was a
Mm-hmm.
reason you got involved and you started that for in the first place. And that it doesn't always have to be just that bad piece and I made a mistake and I shouldn't have, and that second guessing that
Mm-hmm.
you tend to do. I think being able to take that step back and letting yourself take that step back and forgiving any
Mm-hmm.
mistakes that you may have made to move forward again is one of the goals at least.
So let's talk about your future work.
Oh, there's so much.
So, so what upcoming projects do you have, where you're exploring similar themes of romance and music and emotional complexities, or are you going in a different direction?
um, it's always a rock star. I'm always going to be writing about a rock star. That's kind of where my little niche is. I'm comfortable there.
Yeah.
What I'm writing now isn't necessarily a romance. It's more of a literary journey of
Okay.
a musician. There's romantic elements to it, but this is
Hmm.
more starting in his teens. It ends in his 60s. So it's a two
Oh,
book
okay.
series of that roller coaster ride of being a rock star. So I'm in the process of editing that one. I'm in the process of writing another one about he's a guitarist,
Hmm.
also starting 60s into the 70s. And then I have two fun little short stories dancing around that should eventually appear once I get a minute.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm excited. I definitely want to read whichever one you plan to finish first. Do you have a working title or? That's something
Um,
you should.
Working title is I'm going back, and it's
I'm going
pulled
back. Okay.
from I might get this wrong, but I think it's pulled from a bird song
Huh?
because that's what I do. So it's I'm going back and then more to do, which is the same song but different pieces of the song. So it's kind of encompasses all.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. Well,
It
good
fits in.
luck with, huh?
I said it fits in with the genre. So
Yes. I, would you ever, I was meaning to ask you this, would you ever do like a long running sequel to it
well
or
that's
long
kind of
running
what
series?
Well, that's kind of what I'm writing now is a two-book series. So
Oh,
it
okay.
goes, it's the 70s, 80s, and then 90s,
Hmm.
2000. So, I mean, that's broken up into two. So that's where I'm at now.
Hmm.
There's sort of an idea to start to write a companion piece for Nikki, but she's not quite there yet. It may or may not happen. I'm not really sure yet.
Okay. Do you know when we should expect to see your next book, or is it going to be a minute?
Oh, it's going to be a minute. It's probably at least another year by the time I get it all fleshed out and finished and formatted and find a cover and fix all. So at least a year.
Okay. Okay, well, that still isn't that bad. It'll be here before you know it.
I hope so. I hope so. We're like halfway through.
Now, I do want to ask you, with Helplessly Hoping, what are you doing with this project so far?
What
Are
do you
you
mean by?
going on a book tour? Are you
Oh,
doing any book
I'm
signings?
not, there hasn't been much coming out with this one, unfortunately. I need to reach out to a couple of more of the local bookstores, but there are not a whole lot of local bookstores in my area. Um,
Okay.
so it's hard to kind of get get into that. I would love to be able to do that. I'd love to be able to talk to somebody or to
Mm,
people who are doing book clubs. I
yeah.
think we make a really good book club book. So I'd love to be able to try to reach out to some of those people.
Hmm.
So I'm open to stuff. It's just trying to figure out how to reach them. That's my
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, I get it because I mean, the literary world can have its challenges for
Yes.
indie and
Yeah.
more traditional authors. It has its challenges, and it is a huge competitive pool. Even when you're an indie author, it's still competitive in a
Oh,
sense.
absolutely. I mean, and
Yeah.
traditional and indie, they're both doing their own
Mhm.
marketing. They're both
Yeah.
finding their own little places to go and pushing.
Hmm.
So that, just because you're traditionally published doesn't mean that they're
Hmm.
doing the work for you. You're
Right.
still
Right.
doing the work.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's a whole business side that is a huge learning curve
Hmm.
that I'm finding the
Hmm.
hard way
Yes.
on what should and shouldn't do. I'm still trying to build my newsletter. I'm trying to build
Hmm.
my website. I'm trying to build my Instagram account, trying to get
Hmm.
followers there. So there's a lot that it entails that they don't tell you. Oh, it's just like, oh, write a book.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you you definitely. I am right there with you. I am definitely right there with you because when I started out writing, I had to bump my head and learn the hard way. Like, so I need an author's profile. I need a Facebook page, even though I really don't care for Facebook. And
Yeah.
and then I'm like, oh, okay, so I need Instagram. Then I need my blogger. Now I do still blog, and you have to put a lot of elbow work and leg work into it, and then then
While
you're
you
trying to
work,
figure
work. Like,
exactly,
while you're actually earning
exactly,
a paycheck to make this all happen.
exactly. Then you're trying to keep up with the dates for all the book fairs. Like, okay, I can enter that one. Oh, the deadline is passed. Oh, that book award. Oh, that deadline is
That's
passed.
true too. Yes. Or you can't
Yeah.
be published, but you can be published, but it has to be this or not quite this. And
Hmm.
it's just yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of learning curve involved. And
it is.
it's trial and error. There's so much
Hmm.
just trial and error. Like, I'm learning myself not to be afraid to just do it. just
Hmm.
go out and do it. And
Yeah.
there's really no other thing you can do. If you want to do this, you've
Yeah.
got to be able to put yourself out there. So
Yeah,
I'm
you
still
do.
working on
You
that,
do.
putting myself out there piece.
So, if for those who would like to follow you, where can they follow you on social media?
I am on Facebook, Heather J. Bennett, novelist. And then on Instagram, I am Heather J. Bennett official. Those
Okay.
are my two. I tend to be a little bit more active on Instagram. I like that platform a little bit better. Like you said,
Yeah.
Facebook has made it way too difficult to try to
Yeah.
get anything done there. So I'm focusing more on my Instagram account. You can find all of the links on my website, heatherjbennett.com. So that's where you can find me. I do tend to do a post a little bit there, here, and there. And
Mhm.
you're more than welcome to sign up for my new newsletter. So I'm building
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. So I'll be sure to put all of that information in the comments, especially when this gets uploaded to YouTube, so that everyone will know where to follow you. They'll know where to go to visit your website and sign up for your newsletter. And I'll definitely be signing up for your newsletter as
Yeah,
well.
thank you.
So this has been fun,
It
Heather. Thank
has. Oh,
you.
thank you so much. This has been great.